everyone, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk ETC. So a lot of people have been flustered by the recent downturn in cryptocurrency land, and so they may or may not know how to deal with their emotions when we have such corrections. And so I invited PH Madore to talk about the ups and downs of the cryptocurrency economy and the current downturn especially. He's a writer for CCN. He's also a veteran, and his writing has a focus on cryptocurrency. So he's been doing this for years, and he has a lot of experience to bring to the table. So welcome, PH.
Hi, how you doing?
Should I refer to you as PH?
You can call me Paul, Chris.
Okay, Paul, that's fine. Okay.
I use my initials because there's a few other Paul Madores with some Googleability.
I see.
Yeah, and I mean my entire life, the internet's been a thing. So early on, I knew if I wanted to differentiate myself, I needed to do something about it.
Okay. So you've been a writer at CCN and a veteran, which of course is interesting to people. Why don't you kind of describe your background and how you found yourself writing for so long about cryptocurrency, how you fell into it?
Well, that's pretty much what happened. I fell into it. I mean, I've always been a geek, and I've always been a writer. I started publishing like literary fiction when I was about 17. I always had ambitions to be a writer. I never really believed you could make money writing until I did it. Previous to that, I had only made like a few $100 here and there for like some for a place called Flagpole Magazine in Georgia. But in any case, so Bitcoin, I remember reading about Bitcoin initially in like 2011. It was through Slashdot, and I didn't really take much interest in it at the time, which is ironic because I was in the process of losing my first little fortune on the stock market. So if I had taken the same money and gone into Bitcoin, I wouldn't probably have to work at all. But then in 2013, I needed some employment, but I also had taken a much greater interest in Bitcoin. I learned about it actually as it was declining from 1,000. I think it was around 600 when I started really being interested in it. And I had just started a family, so I really didn't have money to invest, but I understood this is a currency, so some people must be using it to pay people. And I found that Crypto Coins News, as we were called at the time, was a website that had pretty low quality writing. Coming from a literary background, the writing was, I felt, very low quality, but they paid in Bitcoin. So I said, if I can just get my journalism shoes on, I could make some Bitcoin. And so I applied to work, and a few months later I heard back, and I started the next year, in November of the next year. When I moved to Arkansas, I started working for CCN, and I quickly, within 3 or 4 months, became the editor of CCN. And then when they launched hack.com, I actually did both, and I was paid in Bitcoin until the middle of 2015. So I mean, I had significant holdings at the time, because I had other employment as well. I managed to stay in the fiat economy too. But it was a struggle back then to actually use Bitcoin to pay the bills, because you might get paid at 300 and by the end of the day it's 270. So I just tried to avoid doing that and held on to as much as I could.
That's good. I was gonna ask you about the volatility and if you were living on your Bitcoins, but if you were able to hold on to it, of course, in hindsight, that was the right thing to do. So it was like getting paid a higher salary, right? So it sounds like you made a great decision.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a lot greater. I had some personal issues that arose later on in 2016, and then again in 2018 that wiped out most of my unspent transactions. And what little I have left, it's one day I'll mess with it. But in any case, yeah, I mean, back then I was able to find, like, on LocalBitcoins, there would be people paying exorbitantly higher rates. Like on a day when Bitcoin, I remember, was trading at like 90 something, there was a guy who would pay like $500 for 1.8 BTC. So it was like almost double or triple the rate. And so I would go through him as often as I could. And
So you
so
would
as a
sell to him. Is that what you're saying?
what's that?
Are you saying you would sell? So you'd sell your
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, and this guy would pay a much higher rate for whatever reason. And I didn't. I'm actually still technically unbanked, so
Yeah.
I use PayPal and like prepaid debit cards and stuff like that. So like I didn't have access to things like Coinbase, but it turned out that in many cases I made a much better rate, because the other thing that this guy did differently was he would give you a code that you could enter on PayPal instead of sending you a transaction. So you just enter the code and receive the full amount without any fees.
Okay. Okay. So very nice. Now you had a better experience with LocalBitcoins than I had. So I tried to do what you're saying. I had heard that there's a markup, and I had tried selling. I couldn't find anybody paying a higher price. So good for you that you did. I also found a lot of scammers trying to basically get me to give them Bitcoin, and then they would somehow try to promise to send the money Western Union or something. And it was obvious it was shady. And once they got the Bitcoins, then they would take off. But so you had money.
Yeah, I mean, I never released before I had money.
Right.
I've never done that, and I've never had a transaction go badly, but mainly because I rely very heavily on the reviews, and I've only dealt with people with 99% or better.
Okay. So
positive reviews.
You're not meeting a drug dealer, somewhere, and who knows who's going to pull a gun on you or something. Okay.
No, I wouldn't never do that either. And yeah, so I mean, I haven't sold Bitcoin in a long time. I think, like, if we're going to talk about crypto and the value of it, to me, I like to use it for its intended purposes. To me, trading is very secondary to the whole thing. I mean, and maybe that's because I've had the advantage of getting in early by comparison to a lot of people that are talking very loudly these days.
Right.
But to my mind, like when I have Bitcoin, it's worth so much more than anything else. I'd like to use it something Bitcoin native. Like Bitcoin gambling, for example, might be something I'd be interested in, or Bitcoin funding. Like there used to be a site called BTC Jam, and there's one called BitBond. There's ways that you can do peer-to-peer lending and earn more Bitcoin than you have, right, without you take a risk, obviously. But I mean, there's a lot of interesting use cases for crypto and Bitcoin. I've always, ever since the beginning, I've felt that Bitcoin would be one among many. And I that's, if you listen to a vocal minority on Twitter, that seems like an unpopular opinion. But then if you look at the market spread and the number of accounts in other cryptocurrencies, you start to see that actually there's alternatives that are very popular.
Right.
I don't see a future where Bitcoin is the only thing, and I see it as totally possible that Bitcoin is displaced by something with perhaps more utility, right, like a smart contract platform.
Right. You brought up a good point that, so people get so excited about the investing and the ups and downs, but the cryptocurrency wasn't invented for speculation on the price, right? It has utility. It was made to be an alternative money supply. And so that we don't want to forget the stated purpose that Satoshi created Bitcoin.
Right. As long as it remains uncensorable and you can, own your money and be sovereign through the miracle of blockchain, then that's what's important. And the price is never been important to me, except when it was vital, to my paying bills and stuff. But primarily, I mean, I have a pension from the military, so like that, especially back then, it covered most everything. So I wasn't too concerned about. It was mainly like the difference between like, can we go out to eat or not? If there was a problem making a sale of Bitcoin, or like if the price dropped too much and I didn't want to sell it. But I've had other opportunities pop up over the years. I was recruited into a small, I'm not sure what you call us these days, but we've tried to do some things like start an instant exchange. We've created like a roulette table that's decentralized and stuff like that. And I got paid in Bitcoin for doing that for a long time. I was getting like 2 BTC a month. So, I mean, like, to me, like, if the price is your concern, then don't buy it. Find other ways to get it. And the other thing is, like, you don't lose anything if you don't sell.
Yes.
So, like, if you feel like you've lost money, then perhaps you were getting into it for the wrong reason. But at the same time, I want to talk about, we're talking about the downturn, quote unquote. Like, to me, it like Bitcoin at its current price is overvalued. I think that the scaling solutions that are being aggressively pursued are untested, number one, and number two, like, they're censorable. They take away, to me, like, the Lightning Network perhaps takes away a vital aspect of the of crypto, which is like payment channels can be shut down. They're much easier to regulate. I'm not sure about how
centralization is being chipped away by these scaling solutions.
Yeah, and it's not just Bitcoin we're going to see that in. I mean, there's always been some degree of centralization in every aspect of Bitcoin. I mean, even when there was only 10 miners, then that was 10 people that had full control of the network. And it's like mining's probably more centralized than we're willing to admit. Yeah. Certainly the people that produce the mining equipment are very centralized. There's only 2 or 3 companies and only one that matters. And they're facing all kinds of problems at Bitmain. So, I mean, like, to me, like, the idea that Bitcoin is perfect or it's going to be the only thing that matters on a long scale, I think is that's called pumping your own bags. And like, if you see, imagine if Amazon investors talked about other companies the way that Bitcoin bag holders talk about other cryptos. Like, I mean, what would that world look like? Where, like, all you heard about on Twitter was how Walmart was a scam, and
everybody was, you were an Amazon maximalist.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I see it as. Is like, me, I'm interested in this technology for its potential to change the world, and I think that Bitcoin is perhaps at this point the least interesting of those things. It's interesting strictly for its market dynamics,
right?
And people, and whatever we want to say, like, the majority of people that are coming into it, especially now, are people that only want to make money on it. They're not building anything incredibly interesting on it because it's actually not the type of platform to build things.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, that's objectionable. And like I said, I started in Bitcoin, and the majority of the crypto I've ever held was Bitcoin, but I've always had an open mind to things like Ethereum, Tron, EOS, anything that is at least trying to pioneer new solutions to old problems.
Right. So since you brought up the current downturn. I know you've written a lot of articles and you're pretty knowledgeable about the crypto economy. And so can you kind of walk us through, or can you just elaborate on what's going on right now? And I know you've already said you thought Bitcoin was overvalued, but can you say a little more about what we should be thinking and how we should interpret the current climate?
Well, the way I feel is the current climate, like obviously, like I said, it may be because I've been here too long. It's, to me, 5,000 for a Bitcoin is just ridiculous. I don't understand. The only reason it makes sense to pay that price, which, you know, I will, I receive still some income in Bitcoin, is because the only reason it makes sense at this level is because we expect it to go higher. But I think that the recent bull run activity we saw was fueled by emotion. I think that people just, and we're seeing some retracement now. I feel like people seize the day to buy. The people that wanted to acquire more felt like, you know, we're running out of time. We're not gonna be able to buy any lower than X. So let's buy here, and then that just, you know, that's the way the market works. But like the way I see it is like, if you already hold Bitcoin and you bought it at a higher price than this, it doesn't make sense to sell here.
Mm-hmm.
It makes more sense to try and invest it in things that may have, you know, may move more elastically. Because Bitcoin for the past year or so has managed to stay within these very tight ranges for a long time. And it's only like the past few weeks we've seen this big movement. Before that, it was months of $100 to $200, you know, changes. And so, I mean, what we should be thinking is about why we want to hold crypto and what we want to do with it, not necessarily. I mean, it's like saying, if you bought a house because you wanted to live there, and then the value of the house drops, and you decide to sell the house because it lost value, like, did you buy it because you wanted to live there, or did you buy it because you wanted to make money?
Right.
That's the same mentality to me. So it's like, I wouldn't buy a house I didn't want to live in, and I wouldn't buy a house I didn't want to. If I was going to rent a house, then rent out a house, I would, you know, make sure it was something I wanted to be stuck with for a long time.
Right.
Like, the value of something is always subjective, and the people, over 53% of Bitcoin is never even traded. It's never been used at all. So like, the actual price is determined by a very small number of Bitcoins and an even smaller number of traders. So like, how you feel about their decisions to buy and sell that day, I think if you let it affect too much of your life, or really, it's not a small player's game anymore. Like, I wouldn't recommend anyone, you know, like unqualified investor levels, to actually be trading in Bitcoin. Like, if you want to buy and hold, that's one thing, but I wouldn't say it's a great idea to try and make your living in a market this volatile.
Okay. So you're not very excited about investing in Bitcoin, and you think it's overinflated. Do you feel the same way about all cryptocurrencies in general? We know that now that there's a lot of alternatives to Bitcoin. You feel the same way about all the other ones?
No, I mean, and I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't summarize my view as saying it's overvalued.
Okay.
I'll just say that I don't know that the actual buy support is there. Like, I don't know if someone holding, say, 100,000 Bitcoin could liquidate them anywhere close to $5,000 each.
Okay.
I tend to doubt that. Like, I think that would be the like, that's, for all the growth we've had, we're still at a point where like that type of downward pressure would actually affect the entire market, and the market's so infested with trading bots that we would see the response like in real time. Like, I think the price would start to
right?
I think that the liquidity is not there to justify, prices this high. Yeah.
And so, and then
Like real liquidity, like the cash is available, like, and people are ready and willing to pay that price.
right.
I don't think that the current price is ever accurate until, you're in the trillions as far as the market size.
Okay.
Then you can safely say, like, okay, we could liquidate 1 million Bitcoin at this price.
Right. So expect all kinds of crazy ups and downs, fluctuations in Bitcoin, and then especially in other altcoins with an even smaller market cap.
Yeah, but I mean the market cap is a fictitious idea anyway. If you believe that this stuff is valuable, then you need to focus. Like, the way to stay sane is to focus on, like, your net worth may have changed a little, but you still have, if you didn't sell, then you haven't lost anything.
Right. You only lose money when you sell, or you might lose money when you sell. Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only, like, and that's if you decide to sell for, like, if for some like, I just don't believe you should, like, Bitcoin is a speculative investment. It's a philosophical investment. You're investing more than your money. Like, you're investing part of yourself when you go into Bitcoin. You're going to have to be cognizant of your position. So, like, if you don't believe in it, if you're only trying to make money, those are the people that are losing money.
I see. Okay.
The people that make money in the long run are the people that go in with a philosophical disposition, to decentralization, to anti-central banks. Whatever Craig Wright says, like, the whole thing is an antithesis to the old financial models.
Right. So they believe in it. They believe in it. The technology, they're in it for more than just speculation, money making.
I think you have to be if you really want to succeed in it,
Right.
because otherwise you're going to lose faith, just like you would in a stock. Like, investing in stocks is where you should be if that's your mentality.
Right.
And lately you would have made more than in Bitcoin.
So why don't we switch to talking about the future? So we agree things are volatile now, and they will remain so for a while. But what can we expect in the near future? What do you think in terms of the cryptocurrency economy, the market?
Well, I have a site called buckofbitcoin.com, and I think that you're always going to see volatility. I think that it's a distant future where you're in hyper cryptonization, and fiat currencies are valued in crypto instead of the inverse. That's when volatility goes away. Until then, it's, like I said, buyer beware, and come in because it's something you truly want to do. I wouldn't say you have to be passionate, but it's something you actually want to do, because there is a risk you won't be able to walk out the next day or the next hour with the same fiat you put in. And I don't know that I don't know how healthy it is for the market as a whole to have this huge class of people that's what they expect to do. Like, furthermore, for people that do lack faith in the stability of the Bitcoin price, that's what shorts are for. So they should educate themselves on, futures and things like that, because they could still make money without having to, like, you're trying to take the buy and hold strategy and turn it into an always make money strategy. But that's really where you should be, like, shorting Bitcoin. If you feel like if you didn't have the faith that long term it's going to appreciate, like, consider it like an asset, like a home, or a property investment, because that's really what it comes down to. It's something that you're going to be stuck with for a long time, I think.
Yeah. Any thoughts on when we will arrive at that future time when, as you said, fiat currency is valued in cryptocurrency, and cryptocurrencies in the trillions?
I do think that it could be in our lifetime. I think that you've got this on the periphery, and it's very important to crypto. We have this group of idiots proposing, modern monetary theory, and we've got a government that has no accountability. The most powerful government in the world militarily has no fiscal responsibility at all. And so we could enter some very scary situations in which, the fundamentals of our economy just don't work. And cryptos become the only reasonable solution. I mean, it doesn't take long. Like, suppose the government shuts down again for 6 months, and during that time banks aren't able to get access to capital, and then interest rates are reduced and reduced and reduced until they're negative. Any combination of these factors, which are all real world factors, I think will eventually contribute to a situation where you have to crypto. Like, I think that that's the only way it's going to happen, because as long as centralized models are easier and as long as they're enforceable, then they're going to be the dominant mode.
Right. No, yeah, I was always, because I'm a techie, I was always thinking that cryptocurrency was like a couple innovations away from world domination. I was thinking we have to, completely solve the scaling problem. It's going to be all of these innovations, and then crypto.
No, I think that necessity will eventually decide what the best scaling solution is. I think it's fine to let the Bitcoin maximalists play around with their ideas, and the Bitcoin Cash maximalists to play with theirs.
Right.
And I think it's very good for the rest of the, like, there, early on there was this abiding theory that you get from people like Kyle Torpy, who I used to work with. He'd say something like, anything that an altcoin can do, Bitcoin can just integrate it. And so it makes that altcoin useless. But we've never seen even one time that happen. That has never happened. Like, all of the innovations in Bitcoin come from the Bitcoin developer community. So it's like that, but this is good, like, because like Vitalik Buterin never would have started Ethereum with Charles Hoskinson and the rest if he had been able to build on Bitcoin.
Right. So,
like, I think that it's good that Bitcoin is sort of resistant to innovation, because it creates an opportunity for people to experiment without risking, billions of dollars.
Right. So the point that I was actually I was commenting on something you said previously. So it's not necessarily that there's some innovation that's going to make cryptocurrency take over the world, but I like what you said. It might be that regular money, fiat currency, ends up blowing it so bad that the existing cryptocurrency economy then, could take over. So in other words, instead of us doing better, cryptocurrency doing better, the old technology, the old system might do so much worse. That could also happen.
Well, I mean, I submit to you that it doesn't matter how good cryptocurrency becomes. Whatever the majority of people's paychecks are denominated in is going to be the dominant money.
Okay.
As long as the system works,
okay.
This is just going to be a hobby. It's going to be a hobby and a speculative investment.
Right.
I mean, no matter how important it can be, like, if it's not something financial like that, if it's not another global financial collapse, then what I think it will be that really makes crypto mainstream is something that we can't foresee. Like, maybe blockchain becomes the only way to equitably distribute resources like water. Mm-hmm. That may become the case. Something like that. Something that's so obvious that it, like the internet itself, it just doesn't make sense to go back.
Right.
Like, people now send email or communicate over the internet as opposed to sending snail mail, etc., because it doesn't make sense to go back. It's more costly and less efficient.
Right.
So, but just being available as an alternative, no matter how good of an alternative, will never make it more convenient.
I see. Okay. So I think we've covered a lot about the current economy and how crypto economy and how to interpret things now and in the near future. Have I forgotten anything, or is there anything else you wanted to say before we close?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to talk about a little about the crypto media landscape.
Okay, sure.
I wanted to say, since I have a non-CCN platform to talk to, are you familiar with the block?
The block? No.
So the block crypto is an up and coming competitor of CCN, I guess you'd say. But like the interesting thing about them is they have all this investment from places like Pantera Capital and Coinbase and a bunch of investors. They're not making money, by the way, they're losing money. But like I've noticed that they write a lot about these companies that have invested in them, and then they like never disclose those investments, which is kind of a no-no in financial journalism. So I mean, I just want people to always consider the source, consider who you're reading. I mean, I still read the Wall Street Journal. I think that they do some of the best financial journalism in the world. And I just, for as far as crypto news goes, I think we at ccn.com are killing it still. And if you have, if you're listening to this and you have interesting news, come to me. I mean, I'll break it the same day. I guess I just wanted a chance to say that.
Sure. And so you've heard good things. So CCN, they don't do any funny business like what you're saying their competitor does. Is that you've seen only good things with CCN?
I mean, I've been there a long time. Yeah, I would say we don't do that. We don't have any investors.
Okay.
So from time to time, we've had writers sell stories, and we've caught them, and fired them. And but like those are pretty obvious cases, like talking about some random ICO or something like that. Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I have to say is anybody who wants to know more about me can visit me at phm.link.
All right. So thank you, PH Madore, for talking to us. And I'll put a link to buckofbitcoin.com and ccn.com in the metadata. And
sure, appreciate it.
Sure. And so best of luck to your future writing and all your work there at CCN.
All right. Thank you. You have a good day, Chris.